Good afternoon, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of Kiko's Freethinkers Forum. This is episode 61, and we're joined by a repeat guest, a very special guest. Their name is Jasmine Sherman. Sherman is the executive director of Greater Charlotte Rise, which is a 501c3 nonprofit mutual aid organization. Does a lot of assistance with rent, utility assistance, job placement services. They have a lot of other cool, I think, accommodations for everyday people, service the Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, which is the greater Charlotte area. Sherman is a member of the Unicorn Party, and we have some discussion about possibly being on the Green Party ticket too with the Unicorn Party ticket. So I want to clear that up. And Sherman holds a master's degree from the University of Phoenix in business. And you all can go back and watch the episode 45. I encourage all my listeners and viewers to go back and watch the episode 45 with Jasmine Sherman. I want to say welcome back to the show, and we appreciate you accepting the invitation again.
Thank you for having me. I love that you are a person of your word. When we met the first time, he was like, "This went well. You can come back," and here I am.
For sure, definitely. I take this forum very seriously. I see it as a public service. Several of my guests have said off camera that this is really a public service, and so that makes me feel good because it shows authenticity and it shows that I don't want money. I tell people that straight up. If you donate money, I'm not going to refuse it, but the purpose is to get these ideas out, and the more people who see these ideas, the better. These candidates, including yourself, need to be given the right proper shine. You have great ideas, and a lot of the people that I've interviewed have great ideas, and so it's a disservice when you have the corporate media blocking everyone out. No one has a voice. So you say democracy. What democracy exactly we're talking about when you have viable candidates running for the highest office in the United States of America, and they don't get the chance to get their ideas out to the public. So not only do we offer that, but it's an educational forum. And I just want to give a slight ad before we start and say that we've reached 77 different countries. So this is quite an international forum as well. We want to emphasize the YouTube video component more. That doesn't mean that we're going to cancel the pod version, but it simply means that we're transitioning more towards the YouTube video archives because so many people are in love with the videos. They like to see the people and the guests. And so I want to urge all my people who are subscribed to Spotify and the audio platforms that I'm going to keep that available for everyone because I know people drive back and forth to work, but that I want you to definitely subscribe to the YouTube Kiko's Freethinkers Forum version as well. And I urge everyone and Jasmine's audience and all my previous guests to do the same thing so we can get these smaller channels more visibility as well. And again, everything is transparent, is free. Nothing's going to ever be behind a paywall. I don't care if I get 2 million people. It's not going to service anyone. That kind of defeats the purpose if it's not available to everyone information. I wanted to ask you before we get started, kind of clear a couple of things up. We talked on camera briefly about the Green Party. I have my own views about the Green Party. I supported the Green Party last presidential cycle, just to give some disclosure, because I just felt like there weren't any good options available. And something tells me that this election cycle, that I'm not going to be supporting the same candidate that I did the last presidential cycle, for my own reasons. But I want to ask you, you've updated your site. You have a Green Party signatures form on your Unicorn Party site, which is your Jasmine Sherman official site. What went into that addition? Are you running the Green Party ticket and the Unicorn Party ticket?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yes. So one of the things that we have lost sight of, by the way, thank you again for having me. I would encourage everyone to visit your YouTube platform, not just because you have incredibly attractive guests on your performances, but the host is charming as well. It does add a little bit more context. And also in regard to people donating, I think that you put a lot of work into this. And the donations allow you to keep this service a public service and your time spent here and maybe not on other things that could help you be capitalisming in capitalism. So I just want to say I appreciate all of your hard work, for having me. In regard to how I am able to do what you've asked, a political party is just a vehicle to help an individual get elected. It should not ever have gotten to a state where it is your identity. It is the vehicle by which you get the public to know you exist. That is it. The Unicorn Party is the political party that got me on 7 states ballots. We have not given up on the Unicorn Party. However, I promised your viewers and you that I was serious about becoming president of the United States. What that means is I have no enemies. If there are more vehicles that I could put little pieces of Sherman in to get it to more Americans, we're going to get in more cars. We are actively, my staff and I, are trying to contact every single political party in the United States for the ultimate Voltron, Megatron sync up, because all the parties need to sign up, work together to knock out the duopoly. I have started letting people know that we are having inaccurate conversations by pretending that only 2 people are running this race. So, so I wanted to address that. I will partner with any political party that has got ballot access and wants to provide people with their basic human needs. My identity is not tied to the vehicle at which I get to my dreams and our dreams. It is how we get flyers passed out. It is how we get people to come to meetings. It is how maybe we sell a couple of coordinated colored shirts, but it doesn't go beyond that. Your political party is not your identity. They help you get what you want your identity to be accomplished by making sure the things you've elected someone to do are done. That's it. That was long-winded. I'm so sorry.
No, that's perfect. I'm glad that it shouldn't be that, but we've seen that these gimmicks continue to work. Both ruling class parties use identity politics as a way to capture these complete blocks of people when their agendas are absolutely counter to what the people are actually wanting. And I'm going to get into that in a second. But one thing you said, I definitely understand that you said you have 7 states ballot access with the Unicorn Party, right? Mm-hmm. And so the Green Party will basically give you a vehicle to get potentially
another 36, another 30. So when we started approaching the Green Party, they had 36 states ballot access. However, they've had some hiccups. So we're looking at, let's just ballpark it and say the Green Party would deliver me an additional 30 states where we could go focus on states where they don't have ballot access.
And so for whatever reason, I don't even know how the Green Party nomination works because
neither does that. This is the Green Party.
I know, and I don't want. I'm not putting you on the spot to get an answer to the question that's really an ambiguous question. I'm not going to do that to you, but because we have like people who have more visibility than others. You have Cornel West running under the Green Party ticket when originally he was running under the People's Party. But suppose you don't get the Green Party nomination, could you go back and could you continue running on the Unicorn Party?
I am not stopping. Yes. This is me mathing the math. We are using whatever means we have to reach the American public. The Green Party has an opportunity to utilize the Sherman campaign to, 1, provide themselves with an influx of younger voters. 2, get technologically savvy. I am lucky that a lot of my staff have the ability to assist maybe other individuals that are less informed with some better technological ideas on how they could streamline some of their processes. So what I will say is, if I, for some reason, do not achieve the Green Party's nomination, that is not stopping what is going on. The Unicorn Party is still actively working to secure 50 states ballot access as well, because there's a chance that the Unicorn Party and the Green Party might defer on future candidates.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we are just trying to do quick math. But if the Green Party makes the wrong mistake, I'm not dropping out. I am continue on with what we've got to do.
So you're saying that there's no contractual obligation to stay with them. You know how it is. It's set up in the other parties. Is basically
yes. So, and I've let them know that, right? It is not so a lot of the way that we're learning that these political parties they want you to do the labor, they want you to drag people, they want you to get the funding, but they won't nominate you until maybe February or March of 2024. That does not give me or my staff enough time to win an election. And so we are doing all that we can to work with the Green Party because we would like to pursue that nomination, but we cannot wait on people who do not have the most up-to-date timelines. I did bring this up at their annual convention, and I've been bringing it up and encouraging them to have their primaries a little earlier, because if you're running for president, you should have been prepared by now, unless this was a random thing you did.
Absolutely. And just one more question about the Green Party. Are you officially recognized as a Green Party candidate?
Member? So I have successfully achieved and met all of the requirements from the Green Party, except in the middle of the annual convention, somehow the signature requirement changed. And so I need to collect 250 additional Green Party signatures. Once I have done that, I will be an official Green Party, the only official Green Party candidate to have submitted their paperwork. Thus far, no one has done that. I have met the financial obligation. I have met the technical obligations. I've met the FEC obligations. The only thing that I am having an opportunity to pursue is convincing some older, non-melanated individuals to refrain from being Democrat light and actually go for diversity and inclusion. So it's a struggle and it's an opportunity, but we're not backing down from it.
Yes. And I'll be honest with you, Jasmine. It's great that you have a presence, or an association with the Green Party, even currently. Like even if you don't continue with that association later down the road, because from the outside looking in, the forum, which is myself, I'm just going to say that there's a perception that the Green Party is just a Democratic Party hub for defected Democrats. And I think that's why the Green Party can't get traction, is because it doesn't separate itself enough from the blue team.
So you are correct. We have assessed that and we delivered that critique to the national, and we've been delivering it to the local. I had the opportunity to participate in the Green Party event in Long Island after the March to End Fossil Fuels. And we told them we would like to help them with recruitment. One of the things that I suggested in that meeting was open your meetings up to socialists, communists, Marxists. Let the younger generation that is concerned about community activism, let them guide you. Let them come in, use your dollars, and set up direct actions that you all can participate in. You do a couple of things. You fix your community, you build community, and you let people know that you're not just Democrats in green clothing.
Absolutely. And just to mention this, because I've interviewed Mike Termont twice, I've interviewed you twice, I'm interviewing Hashaki Nichols on Saturday. So I'm making the rounds. I've interviewed a lot of independent third-party candidates. And Mike Termont was saying that the Libertarians, which is will be the next major party outside of the Democrats and Republicans, their convention, they basically only have 4.5 months to do any serious groundwork before the presidency. Mm-hmm. And so this is a problem with third parties and independents in general. There's so much going against people running outside the duopoly that time is definitely not on your side.
If I could offer a critique, the issue we have had is those other parties, you already said it, when they broke off, they were not breaking off to be their own party. They were breaking off because the Democrats or the Republicans, Libertarians, Green Party, pissed them off, and they went about their business of setting up their own camps instead of going about their business and setting up their own camps. Mm-hmm. I agree exactly with everything you are saying, and I am along with my staff, we are kicking and screaming and letting them know this is not how you achieve the success that you want. You are showing up and only appearing to be Democrat light. And I'm going to say this publicly. Third-party candidates have never tried to win before. When you look at the structure, and for anybody's like, well, they've never tried before. And we know that because I went into the meetings and I said, well, we want to win. And someone was like, no, but for real, no, we want to actually win. And you can tell that they don't want to win because of how these primaries are structured. You could tell they've never thought about what it takes to run a race because of how it's set up. But they are in luck. They have encountered Jasmine Sherman, and we are going to give them all of the information should they choose to do the right thing. Because I would say if a poor, know nothing unicorn party political campaign can have packets for all 51 states with an accessible audiobook telling every state what we want to deliver for them, how, who, and why, then a larger, more funded organization can do the same. They just don't because we've never demanded. And so I would encourage all of your listeners just to F with everybody. Ask them, produce explicitly what you will do for me, my family, and my state. Any candidate that can't do that for you in 2023 is the same candidates you've been wasting your votes on.
I appreciate those explanations. I wanted to definitely touch on something that you alluded to, and I think I may have mentioned that in the introduction. I think it's before we got onto the recording. I want you to tell the audience, like, what is the March to End Fossil Fuels? There was an attendance of 75,000 people. This was on September the 17th. Mm-hmm. What exactly was that march about?
So it was the March to End Fossil Fuels, right? We have an entire problem with our country. We have so much oil. We have a surplus of oil. Gas prices keep going up, even though we have a surplus of oil. There is no need to continue drilling. The Willow Project got approved by the Joe Biden administration. Joe Biden is the lesser of the two evils. And he has added, 53 metric trillion tons of carbon to our atmosphere? So basically, the march was to say, you are killing us. Please stop it. End the drillings. Take away the approvals. And to my understanding, he has yet to do so.
Now, I'll tell you this much. I don't have an issue with the idea itself. I guess my question will be, what next? Because a lot of people are going to say, well, 80% of fossil fuel is used, that's total energy consumption in the world, 8%. And you're talking about roughly 80%, the same fossil fuels are also creating all this carbon as well. So we know the dangers of it. So, but what would be the transition, and what are we transitioning to?
So what I would explain to people is, first, think about where you live. Different types of technologies will not work for different parts of the country. So where you live is going to depend on what kind of experience you will need in terms of energy, efficiency, and regulation. And luckily for everybody, I have a website that has a policy that explains to you based on what type of atmosphere. So like if you are someone that lives in a place that is dry all the time, right, you would be getting more of solar panels and atmospheric generators, things like that. Each region has its own way. And for people who are like, well, what are we going to do? We are making everything ADA compliant. So we are going to have kinetic pads in your sidewalks. Kinetic pads, they create energy. You walking and using your sidewalks in your mixed walkable neighborhoods creates electricity. We have the tools to do this. You driving on roads that have kinetic pads in them creates energy for free, plus the sun and the wind. We have the ability to do these things. And it isn't like back in the day when it first came out, it was clunky. It's not like that. The technology has advanced. The cells have gotten smaller because you guys, we can't mine everything out of the earth. We have to come up with a different and better way. And while we are stuck on old technologies, we're not creating new technologies to make it even more efficient.
So you're stressing more the new technologies. I guess my thing would be the psyche of people now, because, and this is logistically, this is going to be the case for most things when you have like pretty much a revolutionary change to something different, because we're not accustomed to doing it. I mean, pretty much everything in New York City, and I've never been to New York City proper. I've been to upstate New York. I've never been to New York.
When you won't go?
I, definitely got to find the time to go to New York City. But a lot of the people who got there probably used fossil fuel, like
Yeah,
they
but
probably used fossil fuel to get to the event that they're talking about. And that's not the issue I really have with. That's it. That's like a very superficial contradiction because we understand that right now, that's what people are fighting for is to end the fossil fuels. I guess
right.
the bigger issue I have is I had issues with a couple of the presences there, which I know that you have no control over that, and other people who haven't that are there for the right reasons don't have control over that. But I have a problem with AOC's presence there. I have a problem with the Sunrise movement. Only I say that only because these people have openly endorsed Biden,
Yes.
and even Cornel West endorsed
Even
Biden.
Cornell West. Yes.
And
Yes,
to
yes,
me,
yes.
that's
That
confusing
seems fake
considering
as
that it's confusing because I think it's kind of naive because
it's politics.
Biden and Trump, they got the most fossil fuel lobby money out of anybody per
Correct.
OpenSecrets.org.
It's
But so why do people think he's going to change his stance when the Wheeler project has already been approved? I mean, I don't understand. And the wars is crazy. The war in
the
Ukraine, I mean,
proxy war we're fighting. Yes. So
largest
here's the
military
thing.
producer.
Here's the thing. I agree with you. We did not, my staff and I did not stay for the speeches of the people we did not agree with. We did meet with Dr. West as he is my opponent, and I have to do so because, like, they always line them up together. Either way. But I agree with you. Like the problem is, so if we ignore the fact that everybody burns up a bunch of fossil fuels to get there, right? The issue is we need a statement piece. We've had a march. There's no way Joe Biden can go, I didn't know people didn't want fossil fuels, right? There was a visible thing. 75,000 came to do it. Plus there were online things, right? So that takes away. You do your public now. The march will have been a waste of everyone's time and everyone's effort if they go home and continue to do the same thing. You contacted Joe Biden. You said, I don't want you to do this. He hasn't picked up the phone. He hasn't changed his behavior. So now you must change your behavior. You must set a boundary. He will get no more of your votes. His party will get no more of your donations. Stop giving people fake consequences. I'm going to march and I'm going to take pictures, but I'm still going to fund your endeavors and promote your behavior. That you can't do. Mm-hmm. I'm going to the march. So my team, people on my team, people with the Green Party, they picked up trash. A lot of those marches create trash, but they were cleaning up the trash. You see what I'm saying? You go clean up. I appreciate that. I saw people picking up the scraps for upcycling. So there was a small disruption to the environment, but the difference is I don't care how much you do at your house, how much I do at our house. We cannot compete with fossil fuel drilling and corporations that pollute our environment. One individual entity, even your whole house, cannot compete with a company. We literally drive past things where smokestacks are puffing out stuff we can visibly see. We must now change our behavior. We have notified our abuser, and it is on you to break up with your person who is harming you. So now it is on us. We told him, and now we need to end the relationship. That's really where I'm at.
No, I like that. I was just trying to, and I wasn't really trying to probe to get you as far as like your personal view on it. And again, I'm not even really critiquing everyone that was at the actual march. It was more so the internal contradictions because you have someone who's funded the Iron Dome project, the defense systems in Israel with the whole Israel-Palestine bombarding
Which I would not
Palestinians.
do, by the way.
But I'm directing this towards Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who used, I think, more as like an opportunity. She's from the city. And it's just semantics, I think, have to matter some because if someone casually watching that, they may be like, okay, I see what these people are here for. But then if you contextualize it more, a lot of those people have Bernie shirts on. Mm-hmm. He's already endorsed Biden again for 2024. So why is the march happening a year before an election? Like, why didn't this happen way earlier in his administration? For someone like myself, I get really skeptical when you already know that Biden is like it. Like, why are we giving him the benefit of the doubt? And it says like Joe Biden helped, Joe Biden this, Joe Biden that. I'm like,
there's a lot of There's a
Why
lot
is
of
that?
layers, and I'll answer your question if you promise not to boot me, because the first
No, I'm
answer
not going to boot you. Of course
the
not.
first answer is white supremacy. There's nothing that he can do that isn't wrong. The kids that we were talking about in cages that were a problem under Trump, still 85,000. And for people like, that's not accurate. Yes, they have tried to reach out to 85,000 kids and have not gotten a phone call back. That's 85,000 missing kids to me. That's still happening under Joseph Biden. This is a problem with our education system, our problem with our lack of civic responsibility and critical thinking. People do not critically understand. We pick a superhero to fight our political woes and then do not consistently follow their career. We pick an iconic moment to fall in love with and to romanticize and do not pay attention to the work that they have or have not done. And that's really what it is. Biden is a piece of trash. He's a white supremacist as far as I'm concerned. And I've always said that, and I will continue to say that. He's the problem. But this is an issue for our generation. And I'm talking to people 40 and younger. Our parents, our grandparents, they had their shot. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. Do not fall into that trap of thinking, well, we've been voting like this for years. No, I am only 38. I have not been voting like this for years. I've had 20 years to vote. And in that time, I had to re-educate myself, get an understanding of what civic duty is. So it is not us who have been re-voting in these politicians, but we can go ahead this year and say, and it will not be us, because you've already held your nose and you voted for Biden once, maybe twice. Don't give it a twice option. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You've seen, you've heard, and now you need to act. And that is not something that we are teaching people. I'm not gonna lie, that's not even a TikTok I thought to make until this moment, when I realized people do not know how to get inspired, activated, and then go into their communities and inspire and activate. And that's the disconnect.
Absolutely. The generational dynamic is a real, it's a reality. It is. There's no going around it. We've talked about that on the forum in early episodes, especially with Black people, especially this loyalty to the Democratic Party. I'm seeing some changes, but it's such a threshold. Like, it's hard to break that threshold. It seems mentally. I don't know if it's just all attributed to generational dynamics, but I know that there has to be something. There has to be a shift. Like, it has to happen now. It can't be. We can't afford another election cycle to keep this going on.
But that's why we will have the shift. Our parents, depending on who you are economically, your parents are broke. They don't have the money that all that hard work has been leading them down that path. If you look at people that were with Yellow Freight, they lost 30 years of pension. Our parents have finally had that financial investment to shut up and be quiet because they had their money. However, Republicans and Democrats, neither party is talking about BRICS and the fact that it has a potential to reduce your 401k at minimum by a third and at maximum by 2/3. We need social programs more than ever. And so what I said that to say, the generation above us is a generation that is like, well, I got my money. I've done it this long. I just need to ride it out, retire, and die. Like, that's where they're at. And unfortunately, because they have checked out in their pursuit of money, they're not paying attention. I met a person who's 60 and doesn't know what BRICS is. For anybody that doesn't know, the dollar is the standard. The way we shop, we've made other countries, because of white supremacists, shop with our money. They're not shopping with our money very soon, and that's going to be a problem for us.
I appreciate that shout out. If you follow the forum closely, we've dedicated 6 episodes to BRICS exclusively with geopolitical experts, economists. We have Dr. Jack Rasmussen is coming back on to discuss the implications of BRICS and also the Bidenomics, this fake recovery called Bidenomics. And we've had S.L. Campton, based out of Bangalore, India, come on the forum 3 different times to talk about the 6 new added members of the BRICS coalition, which was originally Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. South Africa joined in 2010.
Saudi Arabia is in there now.
Now Saudi Arabia,
don't
United
understand.
Arab Emirates, Yeah.
With Saudi Arabia, right now in America, when you need to make a transaction, a financial transaction, it takes 90 days. In Dubai, a transaction takes less than 24 hours. We are trying, like, we need to be the people that keep up with that. For everybody who loves money, and don't get me wrong, I am a socialist. None of my policies are anti-capitalist, but I can tell you right now, if you are someone that is trying to pursue money, you won't get it if we cannot keep up with other economies. This is that stage in our life where we have to say, we used to, like, for the first person that sold a bottle of water, everybody thought they were crazy. Now look at bottled water sales. We have to change the way we make money. It is no longer going to work to exploit people because the poorest amongst us have no money. Walmart has lowered their wages, lowered. And yet nobody is talking about unionizing Walmart.
Interesting point. Something you said there about, I thought I'd written it down, but you made a comment about, what were you just talking about?
I was talking about how we need to mobilize. We need to unionize Walmart. They've lowered their wages.
Yes, you were saying something about, even before that. It was right before we talked about, you meant the union comment about Walmart. You were saying something, but anyway, I'll get back to it. I know exactly what it was now. It's about, you made a comment about you're not anti-capitalist, you're a socialist. Can you briefly explain that to people who may be
Oh,
confused about that?
yes. I live in the United States of America where capitalism, money is king. It's all about money. If it don't pay, it ain't nothing that we got to do. However, I am a socialist. I believe that all of your basic human needs should be accounted for without costing you a single cent. Housing, healthcare, education, clothes on your back. It gets a little wonky when you get with clothes, but you should be able to take care of yourself in this world without having to spend a dollar. You should be able to feed, clothe, and house yourself without having to pay a dollar. There are tons of extra shit you could buy. My hair is 2 different colors. That's not free. There's other things. I wear glasses. We can make money for those of you who have a love of money, but I have a tolerance of humans, and that is why I'm a socialist. I don't like all of you. Most of you are trash, but on your worst day, you should have a roof, a quality roof, someplace I would stay in. No bugs, no rats, no pests. A quality place to stay. No leaking walls, no broken pipes, no rooms with no doors, unless it's a structural like design, because people live in a loft. You should have a quality space where you can live with dignity and maintain your integrity. And your refrigerator should be able to have food in it that is healthy. There's junk food. I'm a fatty, but there should be healthy options if you want them. And healthcare. That's what I believe. That's socialism. The community provides for the community, because if everybody has all of their basic needs, poverty would end. Depression would be reduced. The rate of people self-harming would go down. We could focus on other things. I don't have flying cars because everyone doesn't have food. We can't go beyond the basics of living because we have not gone and provided the basics. That's how I define my socialism.
And I would get that sense just reading some of your positions. But I think it's important for people who may not be as informed to hear those types of things, because I think there's a lot of rhetoric that's used against socialists unfairly because they don't understand what socialism is, because what they've been told socialism is. Apparently, Biden is a socialist, which is it's hard to have a conversation with someone when you're saying that kind of. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a crazy statement to make.
No, it's funny. So one of the things that I had, so we talked about how I went to New York, I met Dr. West, I learned about some of my other opponents, and the difference that I want people to ask their candidates and you to think about, do you want sentiment or substance? We were asked the same question, and Dr. West had an idea, and I delivered a plan. And that is the difference we have to play in politics. That is the difference. The people who put the march on and invited problematic people, they had ideas. They didn't have a plan. They had ideas and they built the march around those ideas. They didn't plan. I try to tell people, it is not enough to be like, oh, this pissed us off, let's do a thing. No, you stay ready. You have an open pipeline. So the minute somebody pisses you off, they already know. Here they come. It could be as easy as tomorrow with the technology we have.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. You have so many different policies on your site. It's
More
crazy.
coming.
It's very organized, very organized, detailed. We know where the money's going. You're taking from programs. You're taking from departments like the Bureau of Land Management,
The FBI, getting rid of them.
FBI. Yeah, you have all this stuff listed on your site. So that leads me to a question that I've probably asked everyone that's running for public office. How do you view government, and what is the role of the government to you?
So right now, I view government as an entity that has done nothing but torture and trivialize most of my life. And I say that because I was a foster kid. My parents did not know corporal punishment was harmful. The government, instead of putting us in foster care and putting my parents in jail or prison, could have educated my parents and given them the money that they used to pay a foster parent, that money to my parents to help support their children. So when I say the government has never been an entity of positivity in my life, that's where it's coming from. But the government should be an entity that provides for its people. I'm paying taxes for care, and I do not appreciate, and I hope other people understand, you're paying your taxes for care, except the care that they've decided to give you is military spending and dinky roads. You have to demand more. When it comes to a Sherman administration, when it comes to a Biden administration, you need to know that there is a difference between taking scraps and being happy with them and being able to thrive. There are people right now who are listening to our voice that have actual talents. There's a person who works on my campaign. I pick on him all the time. He's a janitor. He's brilliant. He could be an editor. He does a ton of the editing and copywriting on our staff, and he's an artist. But because of capitalism, because he was an immigrant, we decided that he's got to just be a janitor. We miss out on so much because we do not look past titles. We allow our government to place people early in the system and keep them there. If I was not so obstinate and had the ability to walk my way out of a closed room with no doors, I could be a child of the system. Me being assaulted in foster care, I could have got pregnant by my foster parent and ended up in a Job Corps. Not that you know what I'm saying? There's a bunch of different things. And so my problem is the government isn't currently an entity that does more than exploit us. I do think the government should be a helpmate. The government should provide to 100% to the most marginalized people on this rock, because what else are we paying for?
Yes. I'm glad you answered that question, because I think that's what I expected as far as like your vision of government, and clearly the government as it functions right now scares the hell out of me. And that kind of leads me to the question about nationalization. You've already said that, everyone should have like free housing, healthcare, utilities should be free, public transportation,
yes,
education. And this is not about like the money stuff. Like, if people go back and watch the episode 45 again, I'm not going to ask Jasmine the same question about that. Jasmine explains very well about what they would do with the money, going from certain programs, redirecting from previous programs to other ones, including Social Security.
cut that. That's got to
Social
go.
Security would basically be, it would be converted into UBI.
Universal basic, right. So the reason we end Social Security is because the way that they wrote these laws, Social Security is funded through other people's paychecks. Universal basic income, one, puts that money back in the person who didn't agree to have their paycheck docked, and still provides for the person that needs it from a better, more refreshed coffer of funds.
You cite the economic bailouts where the government based during the Great Depression, the AIG
Mhm.
rescue.
You have to add a new one though.
Yes, absolutely. The Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. I mean, you can keep going back in time and you can see these occurrences. And you get a lot of people that would say, well, isn't that just a corporatized version of socialism where you're distributing money to corporations as opposed
No,
to.
because corporations in the Sherman administration will not exist if they are not good community members. Corporations in the Sherman administration will not exist if they're not paying a living wage. So, what I would say is we are finally holding corporations accountable and giving people a break. We have enough history of corporations being able to rely on the federal government on our dime at their convenience. In our current economic climate, it is time for those corporations to bolster the citizens. And for anybody's like, well, that company's going to leave, let them go. Because I'm pretty sure Tom, Dick, or Harry will be glad to take Walmart's place.
But I guess this leads to eminent domain. Can
It
you
does.
explain?
We
Can
already
you explain
use
that
it.
to people who don't know what that is?
So eminent domain is something that is already happening. If you live in a city and you own your home and the city comes in and say, we're going to build a sidewalk or an easement, they take your property. You can't say, I don't want this to happen because they go, we need the sidewalk to go in a straight line. You got to do it for the greater good. Eminent domain is defined as the collection of land or property or items by the government entities, your state or federal, for the public good. And so when people tell me you can't eminent domain my home, we at the federal government, I'm already manifesting, the federal government has never lost an eminent domain case. My case of eminent domain historically will be the largest eminent domain Supreme Court trial to date. We are ready for that fight. But the reason we know we will win is because we are paying you the money for your home and allowing you to remain in your home. And when you are ready to relieve yourself of that home, we provided you with a vehicle to acquire a new home and a way to make sure your old home do not go to waste. We completely embrace the eminent domain laws, and we will pay out according to your county rules for your eminent domain laws. So if you live in a state where corporations buy up things and displace people, it's probably pennies on the dollar that we would be required to pay you federally. But luckily for you, you'll have housing, healthcare, and education, so you don't need that much money. But you should get on to your county boards now, run for local office now, and adjust those numbers while you can.
Is there what would be a potential setback for having this maximalist approach to eminent domain? Because at that point, you put your trust in the government to do the right thing for the greater good.
I am not trusting the government to do the right thing for the greater good. I am trusting the people to stop paying for something that was once not paid for. Taxes is a new scam. I'm trying to eliminate the scam. You give the people we stole the property their shit back, and you don't have to pay property taxes anymore. It's not about letting the government be inefficient. We have technology now for people who are nervous. If you have your bank information on your cell phone, I don't really want to hear shit from you. Like your law, like you use a cell phone, your money, your life, your adult, your search history is there. Your privacy isn't what you think it is. Now, we do have the people who are off the grid. That's a different conversation for those people. And we look forward to talking to them when they reach out to us. But for anybody that's like, how, it's already happened to you and you don't even know it. Like your neighbors are impacted by eminent domain every day.
We're going to talk about several different topics. Some may be interrelated, but I wanted to briefly touch on the fact you mentioned that a lot of times about just the consciousness in a Sherman administration when it comes to disabled people. You definitely, out of all the candidates that I've interviewed, and this is not even an exaggeration, and the other candidates are going to hear this for sure, but you have the best platform when it comes to disability policy. Like it, to me, it separates you from other campaigns. Like just that amount of work and attention to be ADA compliant. Like where does that come from? why is such a great justified interest, but why such an emphasized interest in that?
My staff, the people who work on this campaign, some of them are disabled. I myself have some mobility issues. I would say that the thing that most people ignore is the thing that unifies most humans is our disability. No matter what camp you hang out on, no matter who you roll with, no matter if you sell it for $2 on a Thursday, people have disabilities in every group of existence. And the people who are disabled get shitted on the fastest, the easiest, the most often. They are the most marginalized group out of all of us. And don't be a disabled trans woman. Do you see what I'm saying? Like their life expectancy as a trans person is 36. And then when you add disability on top of it, and if we're going to be truthful, a lot of the disabilities that people have is because America did not acknowledge pre-existing conditions in terms of taking care of people before shit got bad. Mm-hmm. And so I rep the disability community because they the only motherfuckers getting ignored. They do not, we legally pay them less than minimum wage. Mm-hmm. Even though they in the building for the same amount of time as everybody else. This country disgusts me often when you look at how we treat the disabled. And for anybody who calls himself a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, anything like that, you know someone with disabilities. You know a veteran who now has disabilities because they serve their country. And if you like to pretend that you give a flip about people, then you should vote differently. I will say, people with disabilities get ignored and overlooked for no reason other than it makes people without disabilities uncomfortable. We got to cut that shit out. We have to stop being a society that talks about doing the right thing and talks about ideas and loves to lament and actually do the thing. If you have someone in your life that's disabled, you should be voting for candidates that want to make sure that that person has mobility. People with disabilities are abused because they have no way to leave their house, their neighborhoods. They have no transportation. They lead a life that I wouldn't want for myself sometimes.
And this all goes into the emphasis on healthcare. And you have some disabilities that people don't see as often. Our oldest kid, Anthony, he has autism, and a lot of people are like, I would never know, but we live with Anthony, and we understand that just because you don't see something doesn't mean that it's not there. Correct. And because we understand how it affects him on a daily basis, and it affects everybody. And you cover so many different groups of people. It's a universal experience, like you said. We all know someone that has disabilities. We all know someone who has mental health issues. So that has to be a priority. And I can't tell people how to vote if you believe in electoral politics, but it has to come to a point where people record what are the 5 to 10 most important things you look for in a candidate. People really need to start thinking these things through instead of using their emotional shifts every time something happens. A decision is made, then they react based on the decision. React based on your principles, like base things on your principles. And that would be my advice to people who are on the fence about certain candidates or just the voting process in general. If you're going to participate in this system, at least have principles behind it. And I know everyone doesn't vote like that, but I think that's what people should be doing. I don't know if it actually happened, but maybe people are starting to inform themselves more and learn about candidates like yourself, candidates like Brittany Jones, that I interview on this forum that you may not see otherwise interview. I had a quick question because you mentioned it. Can you publicly tell us when the debate is with Cornel West, or is that
as soon as they give it to me, I'm putting it on social media. Right now, They have 4 of them. They have said November, December, January, February. And the problem I got is my black ass don't like the cold. Who's going to Oregon in January? I mean, I am America, but damn it.
I got my Oregon jacket on and everything. That's funny.
Ideally, they want to have one in the north, the east, the west, the south. So as soon as I have a date, because I asked the person who on my campaign who manages, and they were like, bitch, it was like, we'll let you know when we But yes, so when I met Dr. West in New York, we did exchange contact information, and people heard us agree publicly that if nothing else, he and I will be engaged in a debate. We also did contact Ryan Knight to ask him if he wanted to help facilitate said debate. I like your style though, so if you don't mind, I tell somebody that you'd be interested if you would be interested. I don't know if they would mean you'd have to be there in person though.
Right.
That's the problem.
I have somewhat of an interest. I'm not gonna lie. I will be open to that. Um, and my audience doesn't know this. I haven't announced this yet, so I might as well announce it now. I'm more than likely going to interview Cornel West down the road. I've tried to get a hold of him through my means, but I'm going to have to take other ways to get to him, and I have those sources to get to him. I just I was telling my wife last night I like to be principled when I don't want
Not
to
me.
use.
That's like when you was over here telling people I can't tell you to vote for. I was like, I can't vote Sherman in 2020. I am a politician. Y'all don't expect the high road from me. You expect things to get done.
That's funny.
But we will be emailing, so I could gladly add you to my list of suggested debate moderators. We do get to do that.
Okay. I have a question about what are your views on euthanasia? I know that may be a random question, but
Got
I'm
an
just
answer.
curious.
We got a policy already. I believe that no one should be forced to live a life that they don't want to lead. There are people who have their own personal reasons for not wanting to be with us on this rock. And the way we have set up our policy is that you would take 6 months of intensive therapy just to make sure you're not trying to do this because somebody done broke your feelings or hurt your heart, that kind of thing. 6 months of intensive therapy, making sure like it's not a health issue that we need to rectify, because there are people who are walking around undiagnosed with diabetes that don't know that they're suffering because they have a sugar issue, right? So we want to make sure that 6 months we check out their mental health, we check out their physical health. The next 6 months is wrapping up your affairs, saying goodbye to your family, and at the end, we allow you to have an assisted goodbye.
Okay. And there's a section in your disability policy that talks about it says doctor intersectionality training. Can you explain what that is? Because I'm not gonna lie, I was very like confused by that when I saw that on there. Like,
I'll
what is that
explain.
exactly?
I just used it in the conversation we just had. I referred to diabetes as the sugar. And unfortunately, that's a colloquial term that doctors use with the Black community because they don't believe that we are smart enough to understand diabetes 1, diabetes 2, and things like that. So intersectionality training will have a doctor not come in and say, we've got to cut your hair to, do procedures. We are going to teach doctors actual up-to-date medical terminology, medical technology, and let them know people of color do not have a higher pain tolerance, right? We have to rectify the white supremacist teachings that we have allowed to foster or fester in our medical community. And so that intersectionality training says that doctors cannot tell somebody, oh, you got the sugar, take this. No, give them the actual, and like things like that. It provides that safety net.
Something that you said earlier about we were talking about disabilities, and there is a very ugly history in this country when we talk about mental health, when we talk about overall health. If you don't believe me, you can just go to the 1927 Buck versus Bell decision by the Supreme Court as one of the most atrocious examples of that. But to go to your point, for listeners who may be confused about white supremacy this, white supremacy that, I mean, that's a history between groups being targeted based on just the healthcare industry.
Mm-hmm.
All these experiments and just the treatment towards the patients, and so that makes more sense because I wasn't sure what maybe it was the verbiage, but that makes a lot more sense because there is a cultural protocol that isn't met all the time when you talk to the medical industry.
Even just the way treatment works or care works, right? Like some people have, like, we do a little bit for religious in the hospital, but we don't do anything for cultural in the hospital, right? Like in my family, because of the history with doctors, there has to be someone with one of the adults, the seniors in my community, because they have less education. Some of those words don't make sense, but we don't want them to not get the proper care they deserve, right? We have people going home because doctors are not explaining things. When we make sure that medical treatment is back to being about the care for the body in front of them instead of the 2-minute talk to window because they got to get to the next room, we will have a better system.
And this goes into immigrant services too. I noticed working as a medical interpreter back in the day, and a lot of the patients that I interpreted for didn't even understand the terminology. So you had to explain it to them in a way to where you're not interpreting it word for word because the patient is not going to understand. So you have to break it down. You have to interpret within the interpretation just so your patient can understand what you mean by that, what's going to happen to their kid or to their loved one. We talked extensively the last time about community policing, but I think it's noteworthy to talk about that some again, just to keep that audience up to par with what we're actually talking about when we say community policing. Does that mean the police that we know it would be ran by the communities themselves?
No. So what that means is we would abolish the police you see driving around every day. Those people would become unemployed, eligible to reapply to patrol the zip code that they live in. But no longer will they be over in my neighborhood or any neighborhood where they don't belong. Community policing would simply be kind of the same guidelines we have for living now, except when you have an issue, the police do not show up, your neighbors show up. And there is a structure to get on my website, explains what the issue is. They come with a social worker. They come to de-escalate because people usually just need police, unless they're being malicious, to stop a bad time from occurring at that time. We want the bad time to end, but we don't want to harm people like it's been happening. One of the beautiful things about my platform is we do end poverty. So all those petty crimes you're worried about, somebody stealing your radio, they'll have money to buy their own. So a lot of the reasons you think you need police for are going to go away. What you probably need is a social worker, mediation, de-escalation. In the event, though, should you need someone to be ended permanently, you still have your National Guard. They come through, pop off, and go home, which is what you wanted anyway.
Okay. Yeah, you definitely have an intricate structure. You talk about the community safety task force, and then that would lead to my next question: who would provide oversight for them? And you say the civilian oversight board, which is made up of 12 people.
Also still in the community, also still in that zip code, and cannot be related to anybody on the task force. Can't be sleeping with anybody on the task force.
Oh, okay.
You guys, no, seriously, because we all know somebody that knows somebody that does something unethical because of somebody else. Let's just keep it up and up. And it is something that's not permanent. It changes out. So you're not with the same people all the time. And everyone is compensated a living wage. So it's not an additional task. It would just be your one job.
Does abolition police entail abolishing the prison system?
Yes.
So that's understood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And just defined and outlined where we put those prisoners. And for anybody that's got a question, we review every single case. What we do with those prisoners is we remove them from that facility and we put them in individual domiciles where they are no longer being beaten, abused, or tortured and exploited for slavery. We reassess every charge that they had against them, go through it, and actually build a development plan for rehabilitation. We have a lot of people who were in prison because they did drugs. That kind of person should not still be locked up if they did drugs. Like that's a terrible way to slitting someone to slavery. We have people sitting in jail because they couldn't pay their speeding tickets. Like this is bull. Like we have a lot of people suffering over bullshit. Now, the dangerous people, we are definitely still going to keep them under house arrest. We are definitely still going to rehabilitate them. It's just that they're not going to be abused in a wall with other people to watch their torture. And I'm not saying that they're going to be abused privately either. I figured I should clarify that. What I'm saying is, no longer will we treat people in a manner where you would go, I wouldn't want that to be me.
And see, your policies are interconnected. So for that to be able to function well, that would be under the presupposition that everyone has free housing, right?
Everyone would have free housing, yes.
So all this stuff has to kind of work together for it to work out.
Correct. So I will
Mm-hmm.
be clear. There is no timeline on my abolished prison policy. There only is a timeline on my guaranteed housing policy. That is the one that must be done in 90 days. I think I gave myself 180 because people trying to F with me. But that's the only one. Everything else will happen according safely and logistically sound. I can make it happen a lot more efficiently once I knew who I'm supposed to call and I can boss people around. But right now, I can only give you numbers for what I know I can literally accomplish. But within the first year, Brown second, we should be abolishing prisons right away.
Why decriminalization of drugs as opposed to legalization of drugs?
Because that is the policy that will stop them from being harmed the most. Decriminalization still puts I'm not trying to get everybody strung out on crack, but should you have a little cracky habit, I'm not trying to punish you either. I'm trying to make sure you can get what you need to be okay. So decriminalizing means should you find yourself with that substance, we're not going to ruin your life. We're going to make sure that you can safely stop using that substance and go on about your day. We don't need to make because someone doing drugs is only hurting them. It is not hurting. Now, I'm not talking about someone doing drugs, robbing their neighbor, robbing their mama. I'm talking about someone ingesting, digesting their drugs. That's their business. It should not be a crime for what you do with your body.
Mm-hmm. Brittany Jones is unaffiliated running for president out of the state of Oregon. And she was making the case that Oregon has decriminalized all drugs. And she lives in that state of Oregon. But she was saying that if you legalize the drugs, you would be able to regulate. So how would you respond to something like that? That there would be
I
government
don't want to
regulation.
regulate what somebody else is doing. I am not trying to be your mammy or your pappy. I'm trying to make sure you can be your own judge and live your life to the best of your ability. There are people who are artists, and I don't want to be funny, but there are some artists you can't tell me Salvador Dali did that shit sober. You can't. I do not want to be a police officer. I want to provide for your basic human needs and make sure that every day you can feed yourself and operate. And if nothing else, sit in your house safely and stare at the walls. I am not here to stand on your neck. And I would say that unless we do a program nationwide, it will never be successful because we have one type of rules for one person and one type of rules for another. We need a cohesive policy so everyone can have the same quality life. Having that in Oregon is great, but what happens if that person has to move for work? What happens if you see what I'm saying? There's life happens. We need to be providing people with equality everywhere. But my goal is to decriminalize because I don't want you on crack, but I don't want to ruin you should you have found yourself on crack.
So decriminalization, how does that affect the prison pipeline that we have with, especially with people with drug charges in there previously? So if you decriminalize all drugs, what implications would that have on people who are in the system for those drugs?
I'm letting them out, right? So I am letting them out. We are reviewing all of those cases because if it was a drug thing, it shouldn't be on your record. It shouldn't be a thing. It should not even, it should be an expungement and an apology that we were barbarians before because we know that the drug war was started to hurt people. We know that that is a victim of that war. And we will treat them as such. I'm not like somebody, I really think that we need to take all of the crimes and treat them as the nuanced events that they are. Having a legal system that just a blanket blah is how we have the situation we are in. We are all individual, unique. No one's a monolith. We can't run and punish people that way. Yes, there should be guidelines of equal proportions, but it should not be you smoked weed by yourself in your home. The police went to raid the wrong house and now you locked up. It shouldn't be a thing.
Something that we didn't talk about on episode 45, and I keep citing that because I want my listeners to go back because they don't keep asking me these same questions. I'm like, if you go back, and I've already interviewed this person a couple of times, you can kind of be up to par with everything, the context of the conversation. We never talked about education really in detail.
I started to when you brought up that you have a son that is autistic, because we actually, when we built our education policy, we put children with disabilities at the forefront of our education policy. So in the Sherman administration, everybody who works in education is getting therapy. You get therapy. You get therapy. I'm just kidding. Oprah's not popular right now. Everyone gets therapy. Students get therapy. So we address mental health and we destigmatize it right in elementary school, starting from there all the way up. If you work in the school system, a janitor, a nurse, anything, you are also required to go. But we also take classroom sizes. Federally, we fund education. Classroom sizes are no longer allowed to be larger than 18. You can have smaller, but you cannot have anything larger than 18. 2 teachers in every classroom, and it's a Montessori system. We also put blue collar education, trade education back in the same building, because we have to stop this differentiation between white collar work, blue collar work. You are mother flippers in school to learn how to figure out what the flip you like to do. It should be about education. We also open it up to homeschool children. The homeschool education, it's no longer your parents picking and choosing what they want for you. The education that you would get in school is the same education you can get at home. The only difference is it's at the house. We still expect you to come in for football, soccer, and sporting events. We still want you to take part in home ec. You just getting the rest of it at home. This allows us to regulate, because a lot of people pull them kids out of school for homeschooling and drop the textbook off in their lap. And then that's the education. So we do drastically change education by making sure it's funded federally. We will no longer have fragmented education. And I will use Florida, for example. Florida wants to teach that slavery was beneficial. That's not accurate or helpful. And so a child in Boston might learn slavery was not beneficial, right? So we want to make sure that we go ahead and have a consistent, federally funded education where we are telling children the truth and providing them with an environment where they can thrive and flourish to do the thing that they want to do as children. By making education free, it frees up people's ability to experiment. How many people have picked their career because you chose it in high school, and by the time you were 40, you were like, I don't even like singing anymore. You know what I'm saying? And you've had to now go to a new career. By making education something that we do consistently for the pursuit and the love of education, we'll produce less stressed individuals, more people willing to follow their passions. And when those passions dry up, they can go on to their next thing instead of being bitter or disgruntled or I've got to stick with this because I spent all of this. Sunk cost is sunk cost. We must provide education and we must allow people to move on.
Okay, I have quite a few questions just based on
all of that.
What you were saying there. No, it's just fine. No, I was just curious about who would determine what the truth is. Like, if we're going to have the same universal education across the 50 states, who determines that? Like, how does that compile?
So here's the thing. I am not an educator. I don't even like children. My education policy was written in conjunction with actual professional PhD teachers. We have a standard for what we know is truthful education, peer-reviewed work. We already have that standard. I'm not rewriting that wheel. What I'm making sure is that that standard can't be perverted by any short men in white boots. That's really what it is. I'm not developing anybody's curriculum. That would still be whoever the head of the education department and that group would be, as long as it followed the guidelines we laid out. I'm not a teacher. I'm sorry.
But you have things in your education policy that was suggested is instill in the curriculum in the schools? I mean,
So
you talk about the sexuality education, you talk about the
yes,
IEPs. Is that not
yes.
an implementation?
So an IEP is a child, the way that child learns, that's to make sure that that child who may be autistic, who gets what they need, if they need more time on tests, if they need someone to read it to them, if they need you to do their homework with them that's what that individual education plan is for. That's the IEP. That's still not me defining curriculum. However, the same way the government mandates that you need a math class and a science class is the same way I've added more to your biology class. That's all that is. I'm
Oh, I
only
see.
adding therapy as a class, and we're adding in your science class, in your whatever class they teach you sex ed in, they do have to cover that because we have too many kids being traumatized by sexual assault these
Mm-hmm.
days because they don't know good touch, bad touch. They use words like cookie and muffin. Don't nobody what the flip a cookie and a muffin is if you're not paying attention to no kids. So we need to teach penis, vagina. That is why those are in there to protect the children. And before you have parents that are like, we're not teaching them how to have sex. We're teaching them what their anatomy is so that if an adult tries to harm them, they can clearly say, Mom, Dad, adult individual, this happened to me. And there will be no confusion on what that was that happened to them.
And I'll be honest, I remember having this when I was a kid in school. Like this program or the similar stuff that you were putting on your site was was kind of how I was brought up in the school system here, the public school system here. Um, I have mixed feelings about it personally because if anything, it made me not want to have sex. To me, it almost became.
That's perfect. We don't want kids having sex, not anytime soon. Not anytime
I know,
soon.
but it stays with you for a long time. Just it
If they
almost seems like it's a fear tactic almost. I mean, because sex
well,
is a natural thing. I
sex
mean,
is a natural thing, and we want people to have I want people to do whatever they want to do, but I want you to have a healthy foundation for doing it. Not to be funny, but the way we teach sex has a lot of little boys putting their penises in places and a lot of ladies not enjoying their life. So again, by providing actual education, sex goes from being a thing that boys are chasing and women are supposed to endure into a real conversation about our bodies, how they really work naturally. And I can't have that conversation with you at an age when you're ready to have sex about respecting your partner if you're still snickering over the word vagina and penis.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And thanks for clarifying that up with the sexuality education. And you also have firearms education.
I
But
do.
is that? But I guess what I'm getting at is this a mandatory thing, or is this just something that a Sherman administration is suggesting to the
So,
what's already in the curriculum?
no. So, therapy is a mandatory requirement. That would
Mandatory.
be a mandatory requirement. Sex ed would be a mandatory requirement. Again, it's the anatomy. You're not going to tell me not to tell your kid what a pinky is or a thumb is. So you can't say don't tell them what breasts are and what other organs are, right? That's education. However, there are some parents that might not want them to have some of the more nuanced conversations like we were just talking about, right? Boys enjoy sex this way. Girls seem to enjoy sex this way, right? There might be a parent that doesn't want their kid to go to that class, and that's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the basics on how you protect and know how your body works, those are not negotiable. In regard to firearms education, that is not mandatory.
And why is that?
Why is it not mandatory? Because there are people who have mental illness and will not be able to be comfortable with a firearm. But we do want to provide that education for the people who are comfortable.
I think, but some people argue that you could apply the same thing to sexuality education. I mean, I know you said that
When the data
we need to learn
supports
about that, but I think some parents would be in objection to that. Like clearly, I think.
which part, which thing? I want to make sure I heard you correctly.
I think parents, some of the parents would be in opposition to the sexuality education,
Yeah.
especially geo specific for sure.
Yeah, and those are the parents where we have found the data shows that they need it the most. There are firearms education. The data does not show that kids need firearms education, but the data does show when you look at our sexual assault numbers, when you look at all these abortion cases that are popping up for children that are 9, 10. No, the data supports that we have to have these conversations because there are far too many adults that are using the fact we are not having these conversations to pursue their victims. And I would also remind people, SA happens typically with someone in the home, a family friend, or an individual you know. So you should want your children to be armed with the right ways to defend themselves.
And just to be clear, the Every Student Succeeds Act, is that your policy?
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry, I was coughing a little bit.
Is the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, is that your policy? When you talk about the IEP, does that apply to all the students?
Every single student. Every student needs an IEP, not just people that are disabled, not just people that have behavior problems. Some kids learn, like our gifted and talented kids often get forgotten because an AP class is not enough for a gifted and talented child. And we, again, because we have a one-size-fits-all curriculum, we might have a little bit of like a faster class, but that does not challenge those kids. And because of that, that hurts them too. No, an IEP is for every child. This is how we get parents involved in their kids' education.
This may be, I won't call it an over the top question. It's a very broad question, but you seem to have some solutions to the issue that we have with the debt. I know the debt is only going to keep getting more and more expensive, higher.
It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't. I know.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I'm kind of setting it up for you because I was going to ask, like, what would you do to combat this continuous, like the debt ceiling talks all the time? Like, what would you do to, I guess, make our currency a lot more trustworthy and a lot more valuable? Because back in the day, a dollar could get a lot more things versus what a dollar can get you now.
Yeah, a dollar can't buy you much of anything right now, and once BRICS is in effect, won't buy much else after that. So what I want people to understand is I am trying to provide you with social safety nets in a world where we are currently unable to keep up. If America continues on the trajectory that we have, it will be harder and harder to exist in this country without them. What I want to make sure that people understand is we have an opportunity to protect ourselves, to insulate ourselves from the impact that is coming. We are currently on the precipice of global boiling. We have the debt ceiling, which could be controlled if we, A, stopped funding our politicians' excursions to anywhere they want for no reason, like Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan. That was an expensive trip that did not help us. We can also stop perpetually giving them endless amounts of money for their things. They don't need furniture. Kevin McCarthy, every time he's reelected, he has a budget of over $40,000 for new furniture. That IKEA chair didn't break since he last used it. Where do these things go? So that's how we start picking and choosing where we pull money from. But we also pull it from their salaries. I don't think elected officials should be making as much money as they do. I believe they should have an indexed living wage only when they are on the floor working for the American people. So that's where I'm going to get a lot more money. By providing them with your health insurance and not private health insurance, I'm going to get a lot more money back into our pockets. There are tons of ways of cost cutting, and I'm just going with the low-hanging fruit. I'm not even talking about what we're going to do in regard to the way they get fed, the staff that they have, right? We have saved over $1 million, and I haven't touched any actual budgets. I've just wrangled in their spending. Because it is funny to me how people, fiscally conservative people, love to talk about being responsible with money until they are the ones with the checkbook. Both sides do not understand what it is like to live within their means. And the way that I'm going to get America's money is I'm going to treat it like it's mine. And that means nobody's getting shit unless they need it. Because they're spend happy. They can't. So now you got to fly. Then you can't fly. You got to fly first class. Can't fly first class. There's 3 of us. Now we need a private jet. No, you need to take your ass on over to Delta, American, or Spirit. Why you don't ever see no politicians on Spirit?
So how do you, I have 2 more questions before we go. One's about the military industrial complex. How do you not succumb to the temptation of the lobbyists in Washington, over 50,000 of them constantly there? And the military lobby is amongst the strongest there is in DC. You're talking about a country, the United States, that spends more money on military than the next 9 countries combined.
Correct. And I want you to know every program that I have offered the American public, I haven't touched the military budget yet. I have not touched the military. Do you know how much money I could use when I touch the military? We haven't touched it yet. Everything I planned for hasn't touched their dollar. So I want to be clear about that. When I am elected, we will be closing every base around the world. And I have spoken to a generation that is older than me that does not believe that that is safe. We were not safe during 9/11. We were not safe during the Boston Marathon. We were not safe when that weather balloon recently flew over and nobody knew what the flip it was. That was a test and we did not pass it. So what I would tell people is we need to re-hone our skills on our soil, change our infrastructure, bury all of these power cords. That is not smart. That is not going to protect us. That is not going to help our infrastructure. But you know what budget can afford that? The military budget. All of our troops will be home if I'm elected, when I'm elected. I'm bringing all of our troops home to do the work that they do abroad right here. We need that desperately. One of the things that you can count on in the Sherman administration is I am unfortunately actually going to be putting Americans back to work. Our GDP is suffering. Our infrastructure is crumbling. I need our military here on the ground to help the local citizens have a better type of living. Now, should somebody do something that's going to require American military action, and I don't mean proxy wars that we love spending or loaning out American money for, that's not going to happen anymore. So I hope that answers your question a little bit, but I have not begun to play with that military budget. But one of the things that you can guarantee is every service person out of that military budget will be getting a much deserved raise. There is no reason that our military individuals should be on food stamps, should be depending on social services. So before I do anything, I would be increasing all of their pay. And then I'll just figure out where we're going to put the rest of the money.
And just for my audience, just to plant the seed for the people who are, they have the Ukraine flags on their Facebook or whatever, I'm going to tell you something. Is Ukraine in a better position now or a worse position than they were in even before this invasion last year? Because in 2004, I'm trying to think, was it 2004, 2014? There were 2 IMF loans, and Ukraine is still struggling from those IMF loans. These multinational corporations do this to poor Eastern European countries. And when you start to talk about the global South countries, a lot of the countries in Africa and Asia, Latin America, do you really believe that these people can pay this money back, these loans?
No.
That they can't.
We can't even collect on a PPP loan from Lauren Boebert, and we know she got hands.
And they do this stuff on purpose. It's just
they say it's a
part of the problem. It's a part of the problem.
But it's part of the pageantry of the circus. Oh, we're not giving money to the Ukraine. It's a loan. I would like you to show when the last time America collected on a loan. And for anybody who is listening and is concerned about the debt and China, the United States owes the most money to American citizens, not China, not Japan, not Indonesia. The money, the debt is held here by wealthy billionaires. And so if I got to rob Peter to pay Paul, I can guarantee Americans will be just fine. We have at least 3 or 4 billionaires that owe us money. And I'm going to get
it. Just one final question. As an educator myself who is really weighing the decision to stay in academia or to do something completely different, I see this as educating the public. So maybe this will be my full-time job if I'm successful enough at it. But the idea of tenure track professorship is a big thing in.
I get rid of tenure.
What's that?
I get rid of tenure in my
policy. I know, and I'm asking, I guess my question would be why? Because that's one of the biggest incentives for people who are pursuing education, because education is underfunded as it is, especially for teachers.
Correct. But it wouldn't be in a Sherman administration. What I don't know, I don't think I'm that much older than you, but
no, I'm older than you. I'm 41.
By a couple days. Okay. But I remember encounters with tenured professors in college. They were not helpful. They were tenured. They didn't answer questions. They didn't, like, it was a prestigious, like, I made it. I ain't gonna do shit else. You know what I'm saying? And so it does hurt the camaraderie for unions. It does hurt. So we eliminate tenure because there has not been enough success at having that tenure mark and still delivering a quality product for your students. Now, as a teacher, I understand why you'd want to be tenured because you don't make no money, but we should be paying you what you are worth. We should be giving you adequate time off with your families. That shouldn't go through tenured or untenured. You should be respected and treated with dignity, period. But we use the tenure thing as like a little layover. Let us abuse you for this number of years, and then you could be an asshole. Like,
I guess what I'm getting at, I understand not having tenure secondary school and primary school. I'm not talking about that. Are you talking about getting rid of tenure for tertiary education, higher education?
I don't think that I do not see it as a value add, but I'd be open to meeting with people that could tell me why it would still be relevant when you get
I can tell you why as a PhD myself.
Please.
There is something you said is interesting, because I just want my audience to know is not to belittle people. I have a lot of PhDs that are in education. A PhD in education is not the same as a PhD that I have in literature. The main difference is that the research gap is not even comparable. The PhD that I have is a research degree, and a lot of times we have to get our own funding outside of the school. Money just isn't plentiful for us. It's not available to us.
I agree. And that's wrong.
And we have to prove ourselves over a grace period because of our strong publishing record. So we're giving back to the school by our publications. You have to have, in a lot of programs, to get tenure, you have to publish a book.
Right.
And the biggest school you're at, you have to publish a book. And everyone just can't do that. So that's the incentive behind it.
But that's the school exploiting you. That's the school still saying, we got best-selling offers and raising their price of tuition because of these tenured professors. I'm not knocking anybody who's an author, but I remember being in college and I had to do research for my tenured professor. You got ethics. I know this isn't you, but a lot of professors, not you, have other people doing that labor, have other people massaging those words. And so education should be funded, period. Like, you see what I'm saying? You shouldn't have to scrimp, save, and sacrifice to provide us with better humans. You know what I'm saying? If we remove that financial component from the tenure, you could still write books. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I guess my rebuttal to that would be that those jobs, there are lots of jobs in academia, but the reason why I'm not in it now is because they offer those to adjuncts. And adjuncts, I was an adjunct for 12 years. And so basically I would drive back and forth from the city that I'm in now to Columbia, Tennessee, which is 30 miles south where my wife works. And I would be viewed as the preferred professor over the tenure professor.
Right.
But because I'm an adjunct, I'm basically stuck at so many dollars per credit hour. But under the same token, the taking away of tenure is also contributed to this mass development of just adjunct professors too. And so it has issues both ways.
I would love to talk with you about that, like just to get some more nuance, right? Because like I said before, I did not write the education, but I wrote it with other educators, people who were pursuing their PhD. So I would love to hear your perspective about that. Because I haven't been offered that one, right? And I was very truthful. I was like, I'm not like that was the policies about money, that was more me. But policies about like softer, like not softer, but education and stuff, I did go to professionals, right? We did. I would be open to that, but I do like still with what you described, that's still in my what I'm hearing is a group of individuals are being exploited and a different group of individuals are being exploited a different way. What has happened to me, what my opinion as somebody who went to a for-profit college, academia itself has lost the urge to educate and has tried to become a business. I would like my higher learning educations to be fully funded so they can go back to being higher learning educational places. And that's really what I'm trying to get at through removing tenure and fully funding education.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe that if you are someone who likes school, you should be able to just do that all the time. Like if you just like going to classes, I think that there's a place for those people too.
That makes sense for sure. Like if there was more justice within the education system, maybe there wouldn't be a need for tenure. Like I could see that for sure. But it's a complicated issue just because of the state of academia right now. It's just
Which is why we got to remove money. Like education shouldn't be about money, and money shouldn't be about education. And that's where we have to decommodify our basic needs. Education is a basic human need, and it should be decommodified. The resources like doctors. I want a doctor to have whatever they need while I'm on that operating table. You are an educator, and I heard you say, I'm an educator. I might be getting out of it to do this full time. I don't want you to be miserable because I think some people are bad. Kids is bad, but it's dangerous. But from the time that I've spent with you, it would be a tremendous loss for you not to be in the education system anymore. So I would be trying to persuade teachers like you to come back to the fold. We have money for you. We will even let you stay at home and educate for our online homeschool kids. But I think it would be a terrible loss to lose educators such as yourself and the educators that we've already lost.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I want to shout out some of my fellow educators, Joanna Merkel. She's not in academia anymore. Jordan Brasher, he's not in academia anymore. And Jordan Brasher actually was an assistant professor. So a lot of my friends who were going to be on that tenure track are leaving academia for different reasons. There's just so many political problems within academia,
Right.
and they're not making it easy for people is in higher education. I can't speak
But
for
I
other
think it's by
levels.
design. I think it's by we have literally political leaders saying, "I want to defund the Department of Education." Why the fuck? What we have nuclear reactors on our soil. So just so anybody listening to this will know, he named me a list of educators that when I'm elected, we're gonna be contacting to get right back in the business of educating because we need y'all. We do. And I apologize that my predecessors, the older generation, did not see the value in education because they pursued fascism and control. That is the difference. But we have to get back to right. The more educated a society is, the better it is.
Jasmine Sherman, do you have any other final words for my audience? This has been a wonderful episode 61. I knew it was going to be a great episode. It's always a pleasure being in your presence and talking to you. But do you have any words for my audience, like any words of encouragement or just departing words?
Don't give up. Hope. Like there are days myself when I'm like, this cannot get anywhere. Do not give up. People are fighting. I know it seems helpless, but UAW is on strike. Actors are on strike. Like writers are on strike. Do not give up. The time for change. This is the time. The dial is just getting to that sweet spot. Continue pursuing. And I understand that you're tired. I understand that you are fed up and you might not think that you can give anymore, but hold on. If you need help, please reach out to my campaign at official account at fatsocialist.com. We still do mutual aid. We still support the community. Anywhere I go, we try to feed the houseless. We try to do cleanup actions. Invite us to your city. We want to hear from you. Please don't give up. And vote Sherman in 2024 because you can't afford to not vote Sherman in 2024. But most importantly, I just want to make sure your audience knows we have mutual aid networks. If people need things, we want to be a resource. We are a community, and you don't have to do this alone.
Absolutely. And we will link all your descriptions at the end of the episode description so people can have access to your administration, the policies, and all your other great work that you do with Greater Charlotte, Rise. And this has been, again, a wonderful episode 61. Something tells me that we could have you back on the show down the road if you're open to that. I want to give candidates like yourself 3 times on the forum just so people can get these ideas out. They're familiar with who you are because combating the mainstream media, I don't even watch mainstream media really anymore. But it's just to get the more eyes on people, the better, because it's got to start from somewhere, and hopefully my platform is a way for people to learn about people that they otherwise wouldn't have encountered.
Just promise me that after I win, you will do my first post-inaugural interview.
Oh, wow. You're putting that on me? That'd be awesome. That'd be incredible.
Listen, I am not going to forget where I came from. They will not. I understand that I might be required to go to larger platforms soon enough, depending on party affiliation. But I'm not going to forget who didn't return my phone calls. I'm not going to not be petty. So I already know who I need to give my interviews to. Plus, you're going to make me look good. Look at this camera work.
Jasmine Sherman, we appreciate you sharing your insight, your time, your knowledge, your great ideas, and beautiful people. For episode 62, we have Ashaki Nichols coming up, running under the Redemption Party. Ashaki, if you all don't know, actually debated Jasmine Sherman.
She's such a beautiful person. She's really, like, we don't align politically, but she would be someone that I would totally support hanging out with in real life.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Is there any way people can assess that debate? Is there any way people
Yeah,
can
it's
that?
still on my YouTube. Please look it up. There's also a debate with me and Mike Termat. I Be careful though, y'all. He like to edit audio. He like to edit video real funny. So please watch things in their entirety. If you deal with politicians that are real good at editing, you should ask yourself why.
Yeah, Mike does. He
He
does.
does.
He does. I'm going
He
to
likes
ask him
to.
about that the next time I talk to him too.
Yeah, he likes to edit, and I'd be like, "Dang, who is your spin doctor?" If you ask Mike, Trump hasn't been indicted yet. Thank you so much
But
for
anyway,
having me.
beautiful people, we will talk soon. Cheers.
Bye. Thank you.